All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Professor Connect here, bringing you guys another video. This time, finally introducing what is probably one of the big bad topics that most students encounter in chemistry, and that is an introduction, a part one, if you will, to a process that we know as stoichiometry. And now, I treat this as a process. I try to overemphasize to my own students that this is a process. It is a pathway in which you find where you are at on a path and you follow the path where it needs to go. Okay, so a couple things real quick. The process itself, the pathways that you follow is you pick where you start, right? If you start with grams, then you start here, right? You have grams. Grams can connect to moles. Moles usually connects to a mole ratio. That mole ratio connects to moles of a different substance, and then that can connect to grams. There are two possible offshoots normally, and that is to go from moles to atoms, because we can get to atoms using Avogadro's number, which we talked about before, 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd. Or you can go to atoms of B. So this is a process, and you pick where you are at on the chain and you start there. If you're starting at moles, don't go backwards, start at moles and push forward. One thing of note, it is a big important note. You always need, all in caps, so that should be a big important, need a balanced chemical equation. You always need a balanced chemical equation. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. If your equation is not balanced, you need to go back and balance it, okay? If you don't know how to balance the equation, I will try to make sure that I have a video up, and when I do, I will make sure I will just make sure to have it up, and then you guys can go back and watch the video. I don't know why I just brain farted there for a second. Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna kind of skip a little bit because I don't need to teach you guys how to balance an equation in this video. That is not the objective of this video. But when I teach this to my own students, I do go back and I make sure I review how to balance an equation. But right now I'm gonna try and save a little bit of time because I know that this is a long, lengthy process. So, cesium plus nitrogen gas yields me cesium nitride. So this is actually my first one. If you want to pause the video and try and balance it yourself, go for it. This would be like a problem. But I also need to give you guys a starting amount. We are going to convert from, and right now in this video, I'm only going to do moles to moles because this really is like a part one. I'm going to break this down as in-depth as possible. So we're going to take it from moles of cesium to, I want you to find moles of, I want you to find moles of cesium nitride. So I gave you a starting amount of moles, and I want you to find moles of basically another substance. So I'm skipping right to this middle step. Why am I doing that? I am doing that because I want to make sure that for each part, like part one is the easiest part, and then I build up difficulty. So if you want to pause the video and balance the equation, go for it. Otherwise, the balance will be given. That's always the first thing you need to make sure. Make sure your equation's balanced. I have, as a chemistry teacher, made a mistake when balancing an equation before, and a kid got way thrown off. The next thing we're gonna need, well, I'm going from moles to moles. So I need to go from moles to a mole ratio. Well, where does that number come from? Well, a mole ratio actually comes from my balanced chemical equation. So what am I starting with? Well, I always set up what I'm starting with first. So I'm starting with 0.18057 moles. And I always put that over 1 because that's always what I'm starting with. Keep in mind, I'm starting with moles of what? I'm starting with moles of cesium. So I can even write that off to the side if I want cesium. Now, I need to convert to moles of cesium nitride. So now I need to ask myself, in my balanced equation, I put what I want over what I have. I have this, it's my first step. So what I want is moles of cesium nitride. And I can go directly to that. It is that way in this process. I can go from moles to the mole ratio to moles. So I can set it up this way. So now I need my ratio. My ratio comes from my balanced equation. Why am I putting the cesium on bottom? I'm putting the cesium on bottom, that way it cancels. Just so that way that the cesium cancels, right? So now I need to actually work this out. Well, for every 2 moles of this, for my balanced chemical equation, I need 6 moles of that. So my balanced chemical equation gives me my mole ratio. It tells me what I need. So now I am going to work through this problem. I'm going to actually do out my multiplication. Basically, I treat this as multiplying fractions. I multiply straight across and I simplify. All right, so when I multiply this out, I'm going to take this times 2, then divide that number by 6, and I'm going to get a total number of moles of my cesium nitride. If you're pretty good at math, you might notice, well, 2 over 6 is just dividing this by 3, which is true. If you don't see what I'm talking about, that is A-okay. You can just multiply it inside of a calculator, and you should get this many moles of cesium nitride. So we should go from 0.18057 moles of cesium to 0.06019 moles of cesium nitride. Again, nice and easy to start. I know my numbers may look confusing, but my process is more what I'm focusing on here. How do I go from B, or from A to B? How do I get from the start to the end? And it's the same process every time. You need to look at where you're starting and then get to the next part. So I'm gonna write up one more example, same exact idea. This time I'm gonna make it just a little bit. I mean, I can't really make it more complex. Stoichiometry is kind of just this way, but I can add more steps, and I will in future videos. So for the second problem, we are going to convert. This time I'm going to do 10 moles of aluminum to moles of aluminum sulfide. Okay, now, one thing to keep in mind, I know students have asked me this in the past, and I will tell you guys in this video as well. When it comes to converting, you can go from one element to any other element. It doesn't have to be from one side to the other. You can go from here to there. You can go from aluminum to sulfur. You can go from sulfur to aluminum. You can go from sulfur to aluminum sulfide. It doesn't matter where you start or finish. It's just a process that you go through every time. So pause the video if you want to balance it. Otherwise, I'm going to balance this real quick. So we're going to have 16 aluminums. We're going to have 3 of these. And we're going to have 8 of those. So there gets me my balanced equation. Now I'm going to start my process. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to say, well, what do I start with? I start with moles of aluminum. So I have 16 moles of aluminum. I put that over 1 just that way I have a placeholder, because again, I teach my students on multiplying fractions because they should be familiar with it. Now, I want, oh, no, I don't start with 16. I'm a dummy. What do I start with? 10. I need to read. So there we go. We need to read that number, right? Biggest mistake is misreading. So now, I want moles of aluminum to cancel. So I want aluminum on top or on bottom. Remember, if it's acting like a fraction, if something appears on both top and bottom, it cancels. So I have moles of aluminum that need to go down here. Or, like I said in the first example, it's what I want. I want aluminum sulfide over what I have. That is just for this mole ratio step. It is just an easier way to think about it. I'm going to put 8, because that's from my balanced equation, over 16. And then I'm going to multiply this straight across. So I'm going to have, I'll work this one out. I'm going to have 80 over 16. And that will reduce, it'll reduce down to 5 moles of aluminum sulfide. So that gets me a final answer. This has been a first step, an introduction, a kind of basic go into what is a lengthy process, stoichiometry, one that a lot of students oftentimes struggle with because it combines a lot of ideas together. I mean, you guys can see we are combining ideas of balancing equations, molar conversions. I could even take this a step further, and I could make a student actually figure out with percent composition how to put it all together. I could put naming in here. I mean, you guys heard me call this by cesium nitride and aluminum sulfide, so you can put naming into this as well. Like, stoichiometry is a big interconnected process. So it's a pretty big important idea. I would say in Chem 1, it's probably one of the top 3 ideas covered in Chem 1 that if you understand it, there's a little secret about chemistry, and it's that chemistry at the high school level is actually not really any different than chemistry at the college level if you're learning this material. Like, this does not change from college to high school. Note this is part 1. In part 2, I'm going to use my grams, and we're going to go from grams to grams. Okay, so we'll go through the whole thing. Right now we kind of started almost like one step ahead and we stopped one step early. So I'm going to add in that next kind of layer on the next video. But if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out and ask me. I will do my best to help you. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.